Hey folks, in this video we are going to be learning how to create tables in Google Apps Script. This is the second video in a series that focuses on developing an automated analytics report in Google Slides using Google Sheets and Google Apps Script. So in the first video of this series we learned how to insert text boxes. So we learned how to write this script which resulted in this deck that showed us generally how to create text boxes and insert text, stylize text, set backgrounds, change text colors, and then ultimately we developed the first slide in the final project of this video series, which is going to be a Google Apps script that pulls from a Google Sheet that has data within it that is then stylized into a table and a chart, which results in an automated monthly report slide deck that has lists with text-based feedback, data tables, and charts. So in this video, we are going to be learning how to insert and create tables. So we're not going to be focusing on the styling of the tables. We're just going to be focusing on creating tables, how tables are structured, and hopefully it's a nice quick video. And then in the next video, we will focus on stylizing them. Cool. So we are going to begin by going to Google Drive. So as I've recommended in previous videos, uh, create a project folder. That way all of your materials, deliverables, assets are in one place. That way when you need to reference them, use them, access them, whatever, you know where they are. So you're going to go up into the new icon, select folder. You can call it whatever you want to. I'm going to call this create tables. We're going to open up that tables folder. You can use a sheet if you want to. Sheets natively have Google Apps Script within them. I'm going to be using an unbounded script. This video is not going to be focusing on accessing data from Sheets in order to create a table. This is going to be just talking about how tables are structured so that when we do go to pull it from the sheet, you understand what you're working with. So I'm going to be using an unbounded app script, and I am going to call this project insert tables into slides. Cool. I'm going to clear out the boilerplate. You can leave it if you want to. I'm going to be doing something a little bit new. In some of my previous videos, whether it was my document creation series or the slide creation series, I was sending creative files to my main drive. I'm going to be sending those new creative files into the create tables folder that we just created. So we're going to create a constant for folder ID. We're going to go back to create tables. Anytime that you want to reference a Google file, whether it's a folder or a sheet or a doc or a deck or anything within Google Drive, you will find an alphanumeric character here that is the ID of the file. Go to your URL, copy that, go back to the app script, add in either a single quote or a double quote. I prefer single quotes. There's really no difference at this point. Paste in your ID. This is a string. A string is anytime that you have alpha characters, alphabetical characters. So EZ, you can see, is within this string. That makes this a string. And our single quotes make it a string as well. Cool. So now what we're going to do is discuss how tables are structured. So we are going to create a constant for table data. And we are effectively going to be building a table, or at least the data structure of a table. So if you've ever used AppScript, you will know that you'll see data structured in an array. So these two square brackets that we've just typed are the beginning of an array. So if you ever extract data, like get display values from a Google Sheet, it'll be structured in the format of an array. So we are going to be passing arrays into this table data constant, which is currently an empty array. And that is where we are going to determine our rows and columns. So you're going to hit enter now. So you're going to be on line 4, space in between your 2 square brackets, and you're going to enter in another square bracket. This is how you communicate a new row, right? So this is effectively row 0 in AppScript, or within Google Sheets, it would be row 1. So we are going to enter in month within 2 single quotes, and then we're going to add a comma. That comma indicates that we are moving into the next cell of the row. So if you're thinking about this like a spreadsheet, month is occupying cell A1. That's theoretical, of course, because we need to tell it that it's going to start there, but this is the upper left data point in our table right now. Do another single quote, which means we're entering in a string, and then write an amount. If month is in cell A1, amount is now in cell B1. So that comma is indicating that amount is going to appear next to month on the same row. We're going to do one more data point. We're going to do a comma, and we're going to type in the word revenue. We're going to go to the right of our square bracket, and we're going to enter in a comma. We're going to hit enter. We're going to do another square bracket. This is now beginning a new row. So if we were in a spreadsheet and we just opened up the spreadsheet and we went into cell A1 and we typed in the word month, we then went to the cell directly next to it, B1, typed in amount, and then went to cell C1 and typed in revenue. This comma is the same thing as when we hit enter or we go down one row, and now we're in cell A2. So now we're going to type in the word January 2023, and we're going to have that as a string because our month is text. Amount is going to be a number value, so we're going to type in 145, or you can type in any number value that you want to. Make sure it's all numbers. And because it's a number, we do not put single quotes around it, because then it would come back as a string, which means that it would be text effectively, right? You can't do math operations on text. So it's very important anytime that you're working with numbers that you enter them without single or double quotes. Otherwise, if you want to do like addition, subtraction, multiplication, any math operations, you're not going to be able to do it. So then we're going to enter in 750, and now we have a header row and a data row. So we've successfully constructed a table in a way that we could start putting it into a slide deck so that it's formatted in the same way that it would if you went into a sheet. We're going to create a function now, and we're going to call it main. This function is not going to do anything other than allow us to compile our code. Google Apps Script requires you to have a function in order to run your script. So we're just creating a main function so that we can execute it. We're going to begin by creating a slide deck. So we are going to, I do a little indentation there. So I hit enter and then tab, and then I'm going to hit var, and I'm going to create this variable to be deck, and you can call it whatever you want to. I just picked deck, and I'm going to do slides app dot create, and then we're going to say my slide deck. We're going to enter in a semicolon. On the next line, we're going to enter in var deck ID, and we're going to have that set to the deck variable dot get ID. So now what we're going to do is move the deck into the folder. So again, in previous videos, we have just been pushing it right to our main drive folder, and like that's not ideal. You know what I mean? Like when I use this at work, like in my 9 to 5, I will send files into a specific point. So I think it's time that I showed that to you. So we're going to declare a variable for folder, and now we're going to call drive app, and we are going to say get folder by ID, and then we're going to pass in that folder ID constant that we created, and then we are going to call drive app again, and we are going to say get file by ID, and we're going to call the deck ID. Then we're going to use dot move to, and then we're going to move it to our folder variable. So what's happening here is we are accessing the folder ID so that we can get the folder using the folder variable here, right? So we call drive app, and then we use the get folder by ID method in order to use this folder ID to then access the folder. Then we call drive app again, and we get our deck ID variable here. So what happens is we create this deck, and then within our deck ID variable, we get the ID of that newly created file. That way we can get the file by ID, and then we can use the move to method in order to move it to our folder variable. And what will happen now is when we run our script, we will start to get my slide deck in our create tables folder instead of our main drive folder. So we're going to hit save so that our main function populates. We're going to hit run, and we're going to have to authorize access to both slides app and drive app. So bear with me while we wait for the permissions menu to pop up and for us to give access to our script. Cool, so you'll click review permissions. You'll select your Google account that you want to authorize. Go to advanced, go to insert tables into slides, and you're just going to be allowing. All this is allowing you to do is create, read, update, and delete files in Google Drive and Slides. And these words are like very aggressive because you are allowing it to do a lot of things. But as we've mentioned, like we are not going to be deleting everything. Now, when you do stuff on your own, make sure you're very careful that you don't delete everything. But this script is not going to delete all your files, so that aggressive messaging doesn't apply. Cool, so it successfully worked. So when we go in here, you will open up my slide deck. You can see it went to the folder that we wanted to. And now you can see that we have our template file here, right? So we have a slide with two text boxes with different, heading settings or text settings or whatever. We want to remove this because we don't want this. We want to just start from scratch. So you can see same thing with like how this has a file ID. The individual slides have an ID, and the first slide in any new slide deck is P. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove the template slide now. That way we can just insert new slides and not have to worry about accessing the slide elements to like remove them. And then, I mean, you can do it if you want to. I personally don't. So I do deck dot get slide by ID, single quote P, and then you do dot remove, and that will delete the slide after it gets moved into the folder. Cool. So now we are going to create the index variable. So we're going to do var index equals 0. Oops, sorry. Equal. Okay, third time's a charm. Equals 0. Basically, what that does is like when you create a new slide. I'm going to hit enter so we can scroll up a little bit when we need to. What happens when you create a new slide is you have to add in elements so that it knows where the slide goes in the order. So we're just going to iterate on our slide index. We really don't need it for this one because we're only creating one slide. So now what we're going to do is create a new slide, as I just said. Sorry for the repeat. We're going to do var new slide equals deck dot insert slide, and then do index semicolon index plus semicolon, and then we're going to create a table. So let's add in a comment for that, create a table. So we are going to do var table equals new slide dot insert table. And then we are going to need to tell it the number of rows and the number of columns. So just to keep it simple, I am going to enter in 2 rows across 3 columns. And let's save and then run so that we can see what we just did. Cool, so completed. You can see we now have another new slide in here. I'm going to delete the earlier one, because we don't need that anymore. And then we're going to open up this new slide deck. And you can see that we no longer have slide P. You can see we now have a new first slide in there. And you can see we have 2 rows and 3 columns. We're going to close that out and we can delete it because we don't need it anymore. So let's break down this insert table 2 and 3. Tables are challenging because you have to build them from the ground up, and they need to have the exact number of rows, columns, really cells as the data that you're attempting to pass to it. So in the case of our table data constant, we need to, we could statically, right? When I entered in insert table 2, 3, 2 rows, 3 columns, you could statically do that, right? Like we could pass our table data into this new table here because we have the right number of rows, the right number of columns, and therefore the right number of cells in order to satisfy all of the table data that we're passing into it, effectively 6 cells of data. But if you want to automate a report, it needs to be able to programmatically expand and contract based upon the data that you pass to it. So for example, if we added another row in here for February 2023, this script would break because it needs to have 3 rows, 3 columns, 9 cells in order to appropriately expand the amount of table data that's in there. So instead of statically referencing how many rows and columns you need, you can reference the length. You can use the length method in order to dynamically respond to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference our table data. So let's start over so that you can get in here. So we're going to do new slide.insert table. We're going to open our parentheses. The first thing that we need to enter in is the number of rows that need to be in the table. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference table data dot, and then we're going to do length. And I'm going to copy this so that we can log it so that you can see what's happening here. And then we're going to do comma, and now we need to enter in the number of columns. So we're going to do table data, square bracket, 0. And then we're going to do dot length. So we've used this method before, but effectively when you say table data dot length, that references the vertical length of the variable or the constant. When you do table data index 0 dot length, that then accesses the first row, quote unquote, row in the data, right? So arrays have a 0 index. That means they start at 0. So month has an index of 0. January has an index of 1. If we added in a row for February, that would have an index of 2. And if we added in a row for March, that would have an index of 3. So because we're accessing the 0 index of table data, that is accessing the first row. And when we do length, it enables us to see horizontally how long the row is. So what we're going to do is, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do logger.log, and I'm going to do table data dot length. And I'm actually going to make this a little bit easier to say. So I'm going to say a single quote. I'm going to say this is the number of rows, colon, space, single quote, plus table data dot length. So this is just going to say in our logs, this is the number of rows, and then it's going to reference table data dot length. I'm going to just copy that because this doesn't matter. Again, you don't have to do this. So I'm going to say, change it to be, this is the number of columns, and then I'm going to add in after table data, square bracket 0. So now we're referencing the 0 index of table data.length. And the result should be the creation of a new slide that has 2 rows, 3 columns, and then we should have logging down here that says this is the number of rows, and it should say 2. And then we should have something to, this is the number of columns, and it should say 3. So let's cross our fingers, let's run it, and let's see what happens. Cool, so it worked perfectly, right? So you can see down here it says table data.length is 2. Table data index 0.length is 3. We go to our create tables folder. Didn't get anything in there. Let's try refreshing it. Cool, we got it there now. Sorry, my computer is lagging for whatever reason. But once this slide actually opens up, we will get 2 rows, 3 columns. Cool. And now just to kind of like show you, this, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to do copy January 2023, add a comma to the right, hit enter, paste it in there. I'm going to run it now, and this should result in 3, 3. Right, so now you can see this is the number of rows is now at 3. This is the number of columns is now at 3. You can see our first slide deck was 2 rows. And then when we refresh our folder, we should have a new slide deck in here, and it should have 3 rows. Cool, just like we expected. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So now that we know how to dynamically create tables, we are going to learn how to insert data into them. This is going to require us to loop. So if you're not familiar with loops, this might be a little bit challenging. If you did update the table data constant, we're going to remove our 3rd row, make sure you remove the comma, make sure that your table data variable looks like this. 3 values in your top array, comma, 3 values in your second array. That you should have a total of, what is this? 1, 2, 3 open brackets, 1, 2, 3 close brackets. Cool, 6 in total. Cool, so now we are going to loop through that table data constant in order to insert the data into the table. Let me know in the comments section if you struggle with this at all. I haven't decided if I want to talk about loops more specifically, but we are going to be nesting a loop. Basically, what we have to do is we need to iterate through each cell in each row of table data and of the table in order to write each individual cell. So we're going to do it first, and then I'll break it down. But this is the last thing we're going to do today, so we're almost at the home stretch. So we are going to insert the data into the table. So we are going to begin with a for loop, and we are going to declare a variable for I, and we are going to set it to 0. Typically, my other loops are just I reference I in whatever the thing is that we want to loop through, but because tables have an index of 0, I find it easier just to declare that I is equal to 0. So we're going to write var I equal 0, semicolon, where I is less than table data dot length, semicolon, and then we're going to do I plus plus. I plus plus merely means that we want to iterate through positive integers. So we're going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 until we get to the table data length. so that it's less than that table data length. We're going to do a space after our parentheses, and we're going to open up a curly bracket, and then we're going to write another for loop. So we're going to write for, and now the variable is going to be j, and we're going to have it set to 0, semicolon. And then we're going to do j is less than table data, index of 0, so square bracket 0, closing square bracket dot length, semicolon j plus plus. And then we're going to go to the right of that, and we're going to do a curly bracket. The reason that we need a variable for I and j is because we need to reference the vertical length, right? So the number of rows is what I is referencing, and j is referencing the number of columns. So we need to iterate through each row and each column in each row because we need to individually access each cell in the table. So we are going to reference our table variable, and then we're going to use the getRow method. And because we are using getRow, we are going to use the row iterator, which is I. This is going to enable us to go from 0 to 1. Then we are going to reference getCell. Cell is effectively column, right? But Slides app does not think about it in terms of columns because Slides app is not a spreadsheet. Slides app is effectively just a page, right? Think about taking a white piece of paper with no grid lines on it. There are no points on that page. You can make points wherever you want to. So the way that the insert table method works is you need to access the row and then the cell. So cell is going to reference our column iterator, which is j. So we're going to use j. So what's going to happen here is table.getRow is going to go to row 0, right? First, the first row is index 0, and it's going to get cell j, which will then access cell or column 0, 1, 2, and then it'll go to row 2, and then it will access 0, 1, 2. Cool. Now we need to use the getText method and then the setText method. Now we are going to use our table data, and we need to access each individual point in the table. So we're going to begin at index, like the first index, right, which represents the row, and then the second index, which represents the column or cell. So we do table data, square bracket I, table data, square bracket j. And what this will do is complete our script so that we create a new slide deck, we collect its ID, we access our folder constant in order to get the folder by ID, and then we move the deck using its ID to the folder. We remove the first slide of P. We have an index variable here that we're not using today, but it is best practice, so it's good to have it in there. I mean, we are kind of using it, but it's really doing nothing because we only have one slide. It doesn't matter. We are then accessing that new slide. We are inserting a new table. We are dynamically collecting the number of rows that we need and the number of columns that we need by referencing our table data constant. And then we are iterating through each value in the table data constant so that we can individually write them into each cell. So we're going to hit save. We are going to run. Hopefully not get any errors. Wonderful. Go to our create tables folder. Let's refresh it so that we can see it. We have a new slide deck. And check it out. We now have a table that has been populated with the data from our table data constant. And just so that you can see, we are going to copy that, comma, paste, and then let's change January to February. And you don't have to do this. I just want you to see that it's dynamic. We'll change some of these numbers up just so it's a little bit different. And we are going to hit run and go back in here, delete that. And now we have a brand new slide deck. And when we open this up, it should have another table row. Wonderful. And the same thing works if we wanted to add in new columns, right? So just so that you can see, we're going to add in a third column that's just called text. And then I'm going to add in 12, 45, going to hit run, going to go in here, going to delete that. And we have a new slide deck. And check it out. Now we have a dynamic table that responds to the data that we pass into it. I hope you found this helpful. There's some challenging things going on in this loop down here. So if that was unclear to anybody or if it moved too quickly, let me know in the comments and we can either hash it out there or I can think about subsequent videos that could help to illuminate this. But yeah, I hope you've been enjoying the series thus far. The third video is either going to focus on stylizing the table or it's going to move into accessing data from the spreadsheet. So if you have a preference for either one, let me know in the comments, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.